What's going on, YouTube? This is BoxingWave, and we are back with another breakdown, all right, for a big unification fight at welterweight between Errol Spence and Yordenis Ugas. They're going to be fighting for the 3 of the 4 major titles. We know Terrence Bud Crawford holds the WBO title, and Spence holds a WBC and IBF, and Ugas holds the WBA. All right, so those 3 titles are going to be on the line this Saturday, Showtime pay-per-view with a great undercard. All right, I think this fight here is definitely worth the pay-per-view purchase. You know, lately we've been in some ridiculous pay-per-views, but this is actually definitely worth it. And I actually think it's gonna be a good fight. I think it's a good matchup, and I'm gonna explain all of that in this video. All right. So look, let's get right back into it, man, because you know, we're gonna go through the both of these fighters and where most people or how most people are seeing the fight. Now, I think you're doing this Ugas, and I might as well start with him. I think he's very underrated. All right. I think if you know this division has had a lot of big names over the years, but I think Ugas has been one of the top welterweights since he's gotten to the division. He wasn't as successful as a junior welterweight. I personally believe that it probably has to do with him being too big for the division and him being drained, because I've seen his fights at junior welterweight and I've seen him fight at welterweight. And at junior welterweight, he's a little too big to be fighting at that weight. I thought he was weaker at the weight. He just wasn't as effective. I don't think he put the pressure on like that. I don't even think he was that confident at the division. All right. And this is a guy that's a Cuban fighter, 35 years old, has a long, extensive amateur background, fought in the Olympics before, received a bronze medal, I believe. So he has a ton of experience. All right. He's just not some guy that just happened to get lucky and fight Manny Pacquiao. He actually is one of the top welterweights, in my opinion. But at welterweight, he's fought a lot of respectable fighters. He beat Jamal James. He beat Brian Perella. He beat Tomas Delorme. All right. He had a fight with Sean Porter, which is his biggest test of his career, and had a debatable loss, a split decision loss to Sean Porter, a fight that many people believe Sean Porter lost that night. I think it could have gone either way myself, but he beat an undefeated Omar Figueroa. All right. We all know how tough he and his brother is. So he's been in there with top dudes, and now he has a win over Manny Pacquiao as well. I know Manny Pacquiao was 42 years old, but it's still a win over Pacquiao, who was supposed to fight Errol Spence. All right. So very underrated. You know, a lot of people like to rank Danny Garcia high up there as far as welterweights, and I personally believe that Yordenis Ugas has done much more than Danny Garcia as a welterweight. At junior welter, Danny was much more successful, clearly, but as a welter, I would put Ugas above him over what he's done. You know. So anyway, Ugas, counterpuncher. First thing I think of Ugas, counterpuncher. All right. Big guy at the weight, right? Errol Spence, we all know that he's always been a bigger guy at welterweight, can easily fight at junior middleweight, I'm sorry, and have no problems fighting at the weight. But Ugas, big guy at welterweight, strong, counterpuncher, got solid, respectable power, and can take a good punch, you know, goes to the body well as well. So solid hand speed, really good timing, flat-footed, but has good footwork, all right, with his style. Doesn't move too much. Usually on the attack, usually just takes half steps in, half steps out. But he's very good. Got good pound. Oh, and key thing, good at fighting southpaws. That's major. We seen it in the Ray Robinson fight, another guy that he beat who was a southpaw. We seen him against Brian Perella. We've seen him against Manny Pacquiao. We've seen him against Omar Figueroa, who's an orthodox fighter but switches to southpaw throughout the fight. So he has much success as a welterweight. He hasn't lost to a southpaw, and he's fought about 4 of them. All right. So being that Errol Spence is a southpaw, he's used to fighting southpaws, and he's just coming off a win against another legendary southpaw in Manny Pacquiao. All right. So he's been more active. We got to bring that up. All right. Had a fight in 2021 against Manny Pacquiao where he replaced Errol Spence because of the eye injury. And then he had 2 fights in 2020. All right. So he's been very active even during the pandemic where everything was slowing down, whereas Spence has not been that active in the last few years. So he has some advantages here going into this fight. Being that he's been more active, he's been fighting solid. He has a lot of experience. He's been fighting great welterweights or very good welterweights. All right. So he has a real chance here. I think I don't think it's 50-50, but I do think that, in preparation, especially if Errol is to fight a Bud Crawford next, I think this is a great fighter that will push you, and motivate you to be at your very best to fight a Bud Crawford. You know what I'm saying? And going into Errol Spence, I've been listening to his interviews. I looked at his physique. He was fit to fight Ugas months ago. Normally he blows up. I know going into the Garcia fight, which was his last fight back in late in 2020, I know he was really motivated and staying fit since, he was able to go and work out in the gym. But still, even then, you got to shake off the weight. And plus, it's like therapy at the same time. It's like physical therapy when you're coming off an accident like that and getting yourself back together to be able to fight. You know what I'm saying? So people didn't like his performance against Danny. I thought his performance against Danny was fine. I still think he could have done better, but I thought he looked good against Danny Garcia. All right. But then he had another layoff because he was supposed to fight Manny Pacquiao last year. And he had an eye injury, which caused him the fight, which he had to pull out of. And then Ugas took his place for that fight and picked up that win, which is a big loss for Spence. Because at that time, that would have been his biggest payday. That would have been the biggest name on his resume. I mean, everybody, including Bud, who didn't want to fight Manny Pacquiao. Anybody would stop what they're doing to fight Manny Pacquiao. Even though I think Spence and Bud is the fight that we all want to see over any fight. Any fight is going to take Manny Pacquiao as a priority over anyone else. Just like Canelo or Floyd or, you know what I'm saying? Like the big names. These guys are going to always take priority. All right. So Spence, 32 years old, just turned 32. Southpaw, another big guy. All fundamentals. All right. When I say that, I mean like no flashiness. Even his coach, Derek Chain, said it recently. No flashiness with him. He's just coming in. He's a pressure fighter, a smart pressure fighter. Keeps his guards up. Has a high punch output. Attacks the body well. Has a great jab. Good speed. Good timing. Can move. He can pretty much do everything, but no flashiness at all. He just does. He's like the Tim Duncan of boxing. You know what I'm saying? Just straight fundamentals. I'm not trying to make it look pretty. I'm just working. I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to beat you up. And that's it. That's his style. So Spence is coming off this fight. Like I said, he's coming off like a year and a half layoff. His last fight was Danny Garcia. And that fight was a return fight. Okay, so when he fought Danny in 2020, he was taking, this is him coming off of a year layoff from beating Sean Porter. All right, so he had like 2 gaps there, right? This one being longer. So, a lot of people are wondering, is Spence the same? People are already saying, coming off of the accident, he wasn't the same. And now he had an eye injury, which delayed him even longer. All right. But when I tell you that he's fit, I mean, he's the leanest. This is the best shape he's ever physically looked in before a fight. I've never seen him look this good. He's probably walking around. He's probably been walking around at below, like, or at least around 150 for a while. I mean, he at least looked like it, you know? He looks great, you know? He says he feels great. He's looking to, and I know fighters say a lot of things before the fight, but he actually looks it. And I think it's time. I mean, at this point, like I said yesterday, it's not going to be any more easy fights from here on. From Ugas to Bud to Virgil Ortiz to whoever, whoever he ends up fighting, or if he goes up to 154, there's no easy fights. But it could be Boots. He said he might mess around and fight Jamel Charlo for the money. You just never know at this point. You never know. You never know. And those guys got to stare in the same camp. So I just think right now, I think Spence mentally is like, yo, there's so many fights here. We got Stanionis and Butayev on the undercard, and they both are the mandatory for the WBA. And, let me tell you something. I mean, those are winnable fights in my opinion, but they're not easy fights. There's no more easy fights from here on. So Spence is physically in his best shape, or appears to be in his best shape. Spence is coming off. One good thing about Spence is, even though he had a delay and a gap between Danny and this fight, Danny has a lot of similarities as far as their style to Ugas. They don't fight exactly the same. That's not what I'm saying. But he's going to be getting in the ring with an orthodox fighter who's known for counterpunching. The way they do it is definitely different. All right. And I do believe that Ugas is the bigger threat. I was already expressing a little early, but I do think Ugas is a bigger threat to Spence than Danny Garcia was. Just my opinion. I know they never fought each other, but I think Ugas is just a little bit more of a threat to Spence. So this is a real fight to me. This is a real fight. I don't know if it's a bigger fight or a harder fight than Porter or Kell Brook at the time that Spence fought him, but this is up there. This is definitely up there. And the way I look at it, Spence, high punch output, he needs to be at that. I mean, that's what we always get from him, but we really need it from him in this fight, because he's going to be fighting a counterpuncher. He's going to be fighting someone that's going to try to slow down the pace. Like, Ugas likes to try to really slow down the pace with his counters. And sometimes it doesn't really work. Like, sometimes there's gaps in the fights that make it somewhat boring. Like, where the crowd might boo a little bit, I noticed that if you watch the Pacquiao fight or if you watch the Sean Porter fight, sometimes he slows it up to a point where guys got to really think before they throw whatever punch they're throwing. You can't really just come in reckless against him, because Ugas is a good counterpuncher, right? And he hits hard enough. So guys like Manny Pacquiao, who's already aging, who's not throwing as much as he did at one point, or that's just not as powerful. And you got guys like Sean Porter, who's used to being a bully, that's usually like a beast whenever you fight him. He's even slowing down how he fought. And it made that fight to be a little boring, because there was periods where both of them are waiting for the other fighter. He actually forced Sean to really box. Sean even said that in interviews. So what Ugas needs to try to do here is, not only does he need to counter Spence, all right, and slow the pace down, but he has to match Spence's output. Like, one thing I'll say about Ugas over Danny is Ugas' jab. All right. I know they're both probably around the same height. Maybe Ugas a little taller. I don't know. I know they're around the same reach though. But Ugas kind of steps more into his jab. He's able to cover more ground with his jab, right? So, and he uses it more. It's like a power. He has a harder jab, a power jab, more so than Danny. You know, Danny uses his jab to set up certain shots he does, but I think Ugas is a little bit more effective with it. So being that Spence is a great jabber, he throws a lot of jabs and he has a good jab. There's gonna be a lot of probing. It's gonna be a lot of jabbing in that fight when it goes down. Another thing with Ugas, like I said, he has to match the output of Errol Spence. Errol's going to be throwing straight lefts. He's going to be jabbing. He's going to be changing levels. He's going to be going to the body and trying to get on the inside and muscle you around. He actually uses his fundamentals. He keeps that guard up. If you just notice him, you watch him fight, you notice that whenever he's throwing the jab, the left hook or the left hand is always up. He's always keeping it up, you know? Not saying you can't catch him. You could catch him, especially like Danny. One thing that Ugas does that Danny did is that they throw their right hand, but they loop it. So they'll fake it low and loop it up top. They're both good at really doing that. And I think that's a punch that's going to connect with Spence at times. I think that will be the biggest punch. You know, if Spence ends up getting caught with a big shot, it'll be that right hand. And, you know, and I think that's part of the reason why Ugas likes to fight southpaws, because you get that clear opening to get that right hand through. You know, both of them are going to be jabbing each other to death, but you definitely got to match Spence's punch output as much as you can. Now, being that Ugas is going to be fighting someone that's going to be throwing a lot, it's going to leave him, he's going to have the option to counter a lot. But Spence output is just not, it's not what Ugas, I can't think of anyone except for Manny Pacquiao, but not a 42-year-old Manny Pacquiao. There's no one that Ugas has fought that can match the punch output, and I mean the clean punching that Errol Spence goes through. Like you have to go through dealing with him. There's no one that Ugas has fought that matches his punch output. It doesn't matter if you're a counter puncher. It doesn't matter if you're a mover. If you really use the ring, Spence is good at cutting off the ring as well and keeping that jab out there. We seen recently over the weekend, Ryan Garcia fought Emmanuel Tagoe. Tagoe was doing a lot of moving, but Ryan just didn't know how to catch him. You know, he didn't know how to trap him. Spence is good at doing that. He's fought movers where he had to trap him and beat him up. Now, we won't have to really worry about that with Ugas, but Ugas, the problem is with Ugas here is that not only do I not think that he can match Spence's punch output, but I also believe that Ugas has to be the guy to come forward and try to back Spence up. Now, I've seen the reason why Sean and Spence was as competitive and as close as it was is because Sean was able to make Spence really fight on the back foot for once, you know, and Spence doesn't have the quickest feet. He can move, and he showed us in that fight that he can move and he can counter. He can do that, but that's not really his style. Spence fought that fight in a way where he wanted to fight Sean Porter's fight. You know, he wanted to just brawl it out with him, you know, and then at times he was forced to fight on his back foot, and then at times he would lose his balance from throwing, you know, just trying to time those shots in and get them shots in, sneak those shots in. In this fight here, Ugas is a guy that likes to always wait, even when he's fighting the higher level guys. And that's what I don't like about Ugas. When he fought Pacquiao and when he fought Porter, when there were periods where they're both waiting, Pacquiao is waiting. Pacquiao, you know, he's an older guy now, so he's not just always going to lead. You know what I'm saying? He's waiting for you too. He wants to counter too. He's just not jumping in as reckless as he was before. He's not throwing as many punches as before. So there was time where Ugas and Pacquiao was just sitting there waiting and looking at each other, and Ugas wouldn't make a move. Same thing with Sean Porter. You know, now that you slowed down Sean Porter, what are you going to do about it? You need to walk him down. You need to throw more. Ugas, no, he still waited. See, now when he fought guys that he was like really successful against like maybe like guys like Ray Robinson or Brian Perella. If you look at those fights, those guys, those southpaws, and I'm keeping it all southpaw in this video. Those southpaws weren't the guys that were on in the attack. You know, those are the guys that Ugas was able to walk down and pressure because they didn't have the power, you know, to keep Ugas off of them. But the fighters that Ugas really respected, the higher level guys like the Porters and the Pacquiaos, those are the guys where no matter what, even if he's having success with the counters, he still he'll start to wait because he has too much respect. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is going to happen again with this Errol Spence fight. There's going to be times where he's going to land a pull counter, right hand, and he's going to not follow it up with anything. You know? You need to push Errol Spence back. And I think if he does do it, I don't think he's going to. But I think if he can do it and stay consistent with that, then he has a real chance of pulling off the upset. You know? The thing is, you can't catch Errol for 1 or 2 shots and think that he's going to back off. No, he's going to fall back for a second, reset himself, and come right back forward. You know, he's a train. He's just going to come right back at you. You know, he's still going to be throwing the jab. You know, he's a pressure fire, but he's a very cautious one. You know, and I think his punch output alone is what's likely going to win the fight. If it does go to the cards, that's going to win him the fight because it's not going to stop. Yes, Ugas is definitely going to land his counters. Is his counters going to be effective enough for Errol to slow down? You know? Now, they both good at going at the body, but it's different. Errol commits to the body, right? He commits to the body. Like, he wants to get in and get to that body, dig to that body. Whereas Ugas is a type of guy where when you get into his space or when you trade with him a little bit, he'll, you know, while you're shaking it up, he'll go to the body a couple of times. He'll throw 2-3 punch combinations to the body, but he doesn't really commit to the body. It's more like when you're close enough, when you're in, then he'll go to the body. Whereas Spence is coming in and, you know, he's trying to close a gap by using his jab. And then he'll go to the body. You know, so there's a difference between the two where Ugas is a very good body puncher, but he's more like, you know, he goes to the body with the jab or he counters to the body or he's waiting for you. Once you in the space, boom, boom, boom. He'll get you a couple shots down low. But Spence is coming for the body, especially as the fight goes on and when you slow down. Which Ugas, who is 35 years old, he'll be 36 this summer. I just feel like as competitive as this 6 rounds going to be, this first 6 rounds, and I think this is going to be a really, really good fight. I think Ugas is so underrated. This is going to be a really good fight. But after those 6, 7 rounds go, that's when Spence is just getting warmed up. You know? And I don't know how much Ugas is going to be able to deal with the relentless pressure and the punch output. Good counter puncher. Hopefully on his part, he slows Spence down with those counters and he tries to come forward a little bit. And I think he probably will because I'm sure they're looking at it. And, you know, I've heard, you know, just hearing people talk about the fight, I think most people agree that Ugas, if he wants to have a real chance of winning this fight, he's going to have to walk Spence down. He can't let Spence just do what he wants to do. No matter how good of a counterpuncher you are, at the end of the day, you don't want to just be fighting on your back foot the whole time. You don't. And you especially don't want your back against the ropes. But even if he starts doing that, I don't think he can stick to it and maintain it. And that's why I have Errol Spence winning this fight. I think I'm going to go with a decision. But I think if Errol is really on top of his game, like I think if he's really like as good as he's saying he is and how he looks, and if he really, really wants to like show out and show the people that this is him on his best day, I think it's possible for him to get a stoppage, but I'm not expecting it. I think at the very most, Ugas might get knocked down. He might take a knee, but I think because of Ugas' very respectable counterpunching, I think that's just what is going to keep the fight competitive and it going to a decision loss for him. All right. But I'm expecting Errol to win a unanimous decision, and I'm expecting him to be a 3-belt title holder in this division. All right. Unified champion. All right. So it should be a really good fight. I think I cover all ground there. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. All right. Smash that like button so it can, share the video and do all of that stuff. I should be covering a fight this weekend. Again, very good undercard as well. Be on the lookout for a breakdown of Butayev and Stanionis as well, because that's a really good fight, undercard fight. And I think that's it. Pay-per-view is going to be $75. I saw somebody talking about it being $100 online. I don't know. I went to Showtime website and they have it at $74.99. All right. So anyway, that's it. I'll see you guys on the next one. I'm out. Peace.